Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm so excited because, believe it or not, it's been 18 months since I first rode my 2022 KTM RC8C at the track at Jerez in southern Spain. And in that time, I've clocked over 2,200 miles of tracking, racing, crashing, buying parts, and maintaining the bike. And I figured it's time to do a long-term ownership review of the RC8C. Now, I'm gonna try to be as unbiased as possible because honestly, there's no such thing as a perfect motorcycle. In the video, we're gonna cover the buying delivery experience, the performance of the bike over the long term, parts availability, pricing, and maintenance, some unique things that are truly special about the bike and the ownership of the bike, and then wrap it all up with a, was it worth it? Before we begin, please smash that like button. It really helps with the recommendations. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Thanks. All right, let's jump right into it. Why do I want to talk about the buying and delivery experience of a motorcycle? How different can it be, right? So back in the summer of 2021, KTM came out with this marketing campaign about this new, elusive KTM RC8C, really with very little information. There was a website, there's a short video, and then there are some specs listed on the website, and you kind of just had to trust that KTM would build a good motorcycle. And kind of the crazy thing is that this was actually my first KTM I've ever purchased. And I kind of just went on this notion that KTM was a very good manufacturer. They obviously dominate in different disciplines like dirt and enduro, motocross, etc. But also their MotoGP program was starting to really take off and they were seeing some really good results. And I thought, well, that'd be really cool if they made like a Grand Prix or track only sport bike, and lo and behold, they came out with the RC8C. So when the bike became available to purchase, you had to buy it online. It wasn't like you were gonna go into a showroom floor, so none of that was available. You really just had to trust and go. So when the day came to buy the bike, I was just sitting there on the computer, spamming refresh to try to load the page and adding the bike to cart like it was an Amazon order. It was crazy. And what was really nuts was that all 100 units was sold in 4 minutes. And that level of demand was completely unanticipated. But on top of all of that was the delivery experience. So if you're one of the first 25, you had the option to join the KTM MotoGP test team in Jerez at the MotoGP track Jerez in southern Spain to receive the first 25 bikes in the world and ride them. So the first day that we got there, they actually allowed us to observe the MotoGP test teams from KTM, Yamaha, and Honda, which was really cool. We had dinner with Danny Pedrosa and Mika Kallio, which was even cooler. What was the coolest thing was that on the next day, we actually had 6 sessions on track with our bikes, the first to ride them in the world. And to me, all that together was just such a unique and special experience that only a bike like this could really offer. And so I really cherish that memory and cherish that experience with the RC8C. So what has the performance of the RC8C been like in the last 18 months? In short, it's just been really, really fun, guys. It honestly has been super fun, right? And what I think they've done really well here is that they've taken a motor that KTM provides, this Duke 890 motor, which is a very reliable, durable, but still fun and playful twin motor, and married it with this awesome lightweight race chassis that Kramer motorcycle builds, right? And they've put together like really trick WP suspension, really good brakes. The sum is definitely greater than the parts, and that has not changed over the course of ownership. And it still to this day puts a huge smile on my face every single time I sit on the bike. I think one of the things in terms of performance that you have to really learn and embrace when you're riding a bike like this is that it's all about the corner speed. It's really meant to be like this scalpel in the corners, carry a lot of corner entry, a lot of corner speed, and then just carry that momentum out of the corner. It's not a 200 horsepower superbike where you can just whack the gas and just get rocketed to the moon, right? It just doesn't do that. As you start to become familiar with the bike and take advantage of what it has to offer, it becomes an absolute joy to ride. Now, a big part of long-term ownership for any motorcycle is parts availability, pricing, and maintenance. What I've learned is that parts availability is actually quite easy with the RC8C. The bodywork you can order directly from any KTM dealer is just part of the catalog, although it's extremely expensive, $4,000 for a set of bodywork. I'll talk more about pricing in just a little bit. Hard parts like the clip-on, spirit sets, frame sliders, you can order all of that directly through Kramer North America, and all the parts came really, really quickly. I didn't really have to wait on anything when I had to replace things. Pricing is where it gets a little bit tricky, and I think some of you guys are gonna be in shock. So back to that bodywork. The OEM bodywork is $4,000. In fact, the most outrageous purchase I made in 2022 was this windshield. The windshield was $400. That is absolutely extortion. It's a crime to charge that much for a windshield, especially when you compare it with, say, like a Yamaha R6 zero gravity windshield for $110, $120. That is just inexcusable to charge that much price for a plastic windshield. It's ridiculous. The next kind of outrageous price that I found was the rear seat. So the seat cost me $280, and it's literally a piece of foam from this company called RC8C, which does make seats for really cool bikes like World Superbikes and MotoGP bikes even. At the same time, guys, it's just a piece of foam. And when you compare it with, again, a Yamaha R6 track bike foam seat for $50, it seems like it's a bit outrageous of a price. The next part that I found that was a little bit expensive from a parts perspective were clip-ons. The clip-ons for the RC8C for each side was $42, and when you compare that with like a Vortex clip-on that you can get from Revzilla for $19 or $20, it does seem kind of steep to charge double the price of a clip-on, right? The good news is that a lot of other things like the chain, the sprockets, all those sorts of things are just your standard pricing. No differences between that, which was a great relief. Now, when it comes to maintenance, I think it's actually one of the highlights of the bike because honestly, it's so easy to work on. The bodywork comes right off. It's super simple. You can actually remove the front wheel without ever touching the calipers. You just rotate the forks out. Those little things like that makes it really easy to live with on a day-to-day basis. The other big part about this is that the bike uses a bone stock Duke 890 motor. Now, it does make more power than a Duke 890 because it has a full race exhaust as well as the race air filter and tune, but the motor itself is stock. What that means is that the service intervals are every 9,000 miles. Now, that's for like a street bike. On the track side, what we do is we change the oil constantly. And the benefit of using a stock Duke 890 motor is that you use the same oil, the 10W50 synthetic, and the same oil filter. You just have to do it more frequently. So for me, I change the oil every second or third track day, and I change the oil every single race day. Things like brake pads and brake fluids, that's all the same for every kind of sport bike out there. The things that I did is I changed the stock brake pads to the Brembo Z04s, which I think are really good. I've also used the Vezra SRJL XX. Honestly, they're both really, really good. You honestly can't go wrong, and I've used those both over the course of my long-term ownership of the bike, and they're both great. So to sum it up on the maintenance side, the takeaway is that it's actually a really serviceable and really easy bike on a day-to-day basis to live with. All right, so let's talk about one of the most special things about the long-term ownership of the RC8C, and to me, that is the community. There was only 100 units in 2022. There's 200 units released in 2023. So in total, there's 300 units worldwide. And what's happened is that this community is starting to grow and connect with one another. And I've had the opportunity to ride with other RC8C owners at COTA and other tracks. In fact, this bodywork that you see here, this carbon fiber bodywork was actually built by another RC8C owner over in Europe. So things like that I think are really special, and I'm just really excited to be a part of that community. And the other thing about the RC8C community that I think is really special is that most owners that I know of the RC8C actually use them actively from tracking to racing. And I think that is actually really, really cool. They're not being stored in a box somewhere or being collected in someone's living room. They're actually being put on track for their intended purpose, which is great. All right, so if I still have your attention, let's wrap this up with whether or not this RC8C was worth it. So obviously something like this doesn't come at a small price. The total price out the door was something like $45,000. It's a lot of money. You can buy many, many different bikes with it. You can buy much more powerful motorcycles with it, like a Panigale V4 or M1000RR. Lots of options out there at that price point. So when it comes down to whether or not it's worth it, it is entirely personal. It really depends on you as a rider. Having owned and ridden the bike quite a lot, I can tell you that this bike is not for everyone. Let me kind of paint a picture of who this bike is for and who this bike is not for. If you are a track rider and this machine is in your budget and you enjoy the more technical aspects of riding and you don't really need to have the rush of, say, a 200 horsepower superbike, this could actually fit the bill really, really well, because the beauty of the RC8C is in corner speed. From a raw power perspective, it's not that powerful, but what it does do very well is corner, and it corners beautifully. It is absolutely sublime in the corners, and that's really where you're gonna feel where, oh, everything kind of makes sense. If you're a track rider that just needs to have a ton of power every time so you can wheelie everywhere and, you know, hit 200 miles an hour on the back straight at COTA, this is not the bike for you. And I've actually talked to other RC8C owners that expected that experience and were very disappointed. So know what you're getting yourself into if you're considering a bike like this or the Kramer GP2R, which is the mechanical equivalent of the RC8C. Now, the other rider that this bike might not be good for are club racers, for a couple of different reasons. And you might be surprised because I myself club race the RC8C. What I've learned is that it's very important to make sure that your club series allows you to race the RC8C in the super sport classes. In my series, I'm allowed to race in the 750cc superbike class and everything above. Most of the classes I actually race in are against 1000cc superbikes. And trust me, the whole thing about, you know, well, you're gonna catch them in the corners, it gets really old really fast. It truly does when it comes to racing, right? Because you're trying to compete out there, and it is frustrating when you're on a straight and a 200 horsepower bike blows right past you and there's literally nothing you can do about it, right? And of course, you know, if I had a lot more talent, I could beat them, but I'm not that guy, right? I'm just a dude that really enjoys riding motorcycles. If this bike is in your budget and you're a club racer, I would strongly recommend that you double check, triple check with your racing director in your club series to make sure that it's in the classes that you want to race in. As you can see, to answer the question of whether or not it was worth it, you have to make the question, is it worth it for you? And in this case, was it worth it for me as a rider and as a club racer? Absolutely. I love every single moment that I'm on the bike because the bike is so well put together. There's really not much to fuss about it. You can really just focus on your skill as a rider, and you can fine tune and hone your skills and really work on your craft rather than worrying about, you know, oh, did I get the right exhaust system or suspension or the setup, you know. It's really turnkey, out of the box, and it's ready to race, which I absolutely love. The community aspect has also been really big for me. I've really enjoyed meeting other RC8C owners, forming those connections, doing special projects like the carbon fiber body work. All that stuff matters to me, and I think in total, that's been really worth it for me. For this season, I'm extremely happy to continue riding, training, and racing on my 2022 KTM RC8C. All right guys, that's it for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed my long-term ownership review of the KTM RC8C. See you guys on the next video. Peace.